It's been 12 months since acquittal, and so much has passed us by. Such a scattering with evidence, and some blatant flat-out lies. There's a special new prosector, and Hank Breeden is his name. He is a dirty Boston lawyer, and his arguments are lame. He's trying to squash all of our experts, as he has no case to claim. He should have won an Oscar medal to convince the court he's sane. He can lie without a conscience and keep that smirk upon his face. I bet he wears those silky undies, the ones with that jean made of lace. And Judge Beverly Academy is so biased for the state, is wading through 100 motions in a rush to seal my fate. So you can bring in Massachusetts, cause we all ain't got no quit. And we all know that the truth is my car is not the thing John hit.
Good morning, good morning. Back again. Welcome to Friday, fact-finding fun day. Fun day Friday? No Undy Friday? Freaky Friday. Whatever you like to call it. It's Friday. And it's day 17. Already. Good morning, Angel. How long have you been up? Probably about the same length of time as me. My daughter rang me at 6 o'clock tonight, and I was dead to the world still. So, yeah. Never mind. I got a good sleep, though. So, 3:30 a.m., so that would have been 5:30 here. So, yeah, I was awake half an hour after you. Yeah. Never mind. I bet you got a lot done, though, between then and now. So, did you see yesterday? Yesterday we had the end of Maureen Hartnett, and then we had the medical examiner, Irene Scotti-Bello. Now, I was under the impression that the state weren't going to call her, but they did. And in my opinion, I think it went really badly for them, because the methodical cross-examination from Alessi, like he left no stone unturned, and what he couldn't get the right answer to, he at least created enough doubt that there was a possible alternative. So it concluded with basically the fact that the medical examiner said that she could not find any evidence of a vehicular impact injury on John at all, anywhere. So that was interesting. And the rest of his injuries were contained to the CPR. He had a Lucas machine on for apparently 37 minutes. That's one of those automatic ones that do 100 reps per minute, I think, and pretty much take over the chest compressions. And he had some slight stomach hemorrhaging, or what they call I can't remember, Wisteria spots or something like that. But these spots are also very, very common with people who have suffered from a hypothermic demise. But they're also very common in people that have been rapidly perfused as well, which means that, the person could have been down for, he could have been there for 2, 3, 4 hours. You don't know how long. So that person has not had any circulation for that amount of time, and then you start immediately doing these intense chest compressions and, you know, putting IVs up, and that's reperfusing the tissue with blood and oxygen. They too can cause these spots as well. So it's not indicative to just hypothermia. She also noted that there were no signs whatsoever of frostbite anywhere. And the there was an actual picture put up in the autopsy, because in Trooper O'Keefe's testimony, he said that he was the only one there. And then they presented a photo of two people in the autopsy that looked very much like Trooper Proctor and Trooper Keefe. But as you'll see, Hank Brown gets up this morning, and they have actually agreed to both stipulate that the two troopers there were actually Trooper Watson and Trooper Keefe. I can try and find the photo again if you like, but it looks like Proctor to me. And I'm sure that he said in one of his threads in the text messages that he was given shit because it was a rookie move not being able to convince the medical examiner to get her to change her findings to homicide instead of undetermined. So, and she was adamant she wasn't altering it. So they will be bringing on their medical expert at some point. And I was trying to work out how far along in their case they are, because they're now starting to get into some of their expert testimony. But as far as I can see, they haven't had, and these are only the few that I think should be included or are potentially on their list, and that's Sergeant Good, Sergeant Lank, Officer Sarah, he was the first on scene. Renee Stonebridge, she's the forensic neuropathologist that examined John's brain and all the hemorrhaging. Now, I know there's a motion from the Commonwealth for the Sullivan sisters' testimonies to be allowed in. I don't know what the ruling on that is yet, but I can have a look. Justin Rice, he was the ER doctor that treated John. Caitlin Albert, mainly because of the timeline issues and whether Colin Albert was there or not. Julie Nagel, because she saw the blob. Ashley VALLIER, now she was the lady, she was so sweet, the cute little lady from the crime lab that had the really short white blonde hair, and she like stuck all the tail light pieces together, and it was all just numbers. But she was so cute. And that doesn't even include their list of experts. So I don't know. I reckon we're still at least a week off, at least, maybe. We shall see, because the witness lists only come up right as the on the morning of the trial, because they don't really know who is, you know, how long it's going to take to testify. They can get an idea, but they are still on schedule apparently. So, and of course, as soon as I sit down, one of the monkeys wants to eat. You can wait now. You had your chance. All right, let's get into it, shall we? And where's my... There. Lovely. Yes, and if you hadn't noticed, I've decided to continue the rest of the trial solo.
Your first witness, please.
Or if I could begin by offering a stipulation that's agreed to between the parties.
Okay, can we turn the AC down, please? Thank you. Yes.
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to read a stipulation agreement between the Commonwealth and the defense.
Okay.
And the
Actually,
stipulation
I think they
between the
show the
parties
photo.
is as follows. Now comes the Commonwealth and Karen Reed, the defendant in the above captioned matter. Both parties respectfully stipulate to the following. The two Massachusetts State Police troopers present
Thank you.
at the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, on January 31st, 2022, were Trooper Keith and Trooper Watson. Former Trooper Michael Proctor was not present.
Have a-
And
Yes, thank you.
with that, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce and play clip number 21.
Okay. Paul, turn the AC off. Hold on 1 second, please. I just want that. Can the jurors hear better with that on?
I don't think these documentary. I think he's trying to have some sort of impact with these, but I don't think they're
So
having
John's
the
laying
impact
there
they're
on his
supposed
left
to.
and his right, and I approached John from the left. That's where the street is. And he had a piece of glass, like perched on his nose, like just wedged like a splinter would be. And I just pulled it, and as soon as I pulled
Now
it,
remember yesterday when the medical examiner was going through the injuries to John's face, she said he had two little superficial scratches on the left side of his nose.
it just gushed blood down his face.
Oh, well, if it gushed blood down his face, then maybe he still had a heartbeat then.
So we need this marked.
Hmm.
We have the item.
Because I haven't heard of a time of death at all from anyone.
Mr. Lally, your next one.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth calls Andre Porto to the stand.
Well, this is Andre Porto. Now, he is a forensic scientist. He did testify last trial, and he did the DNA testing on the bits of the car. So I'll skip his education and experience, and we'll go into what.
Before use and after. Another administrative review, which where another.
Yeah.
And what areas do you specifically undergo proficiency testing in?
Right.
DNA analysis.
So
And
this
have
is
you
DNA
successfully
analysis.
completed each of those proficiency tests that you've taken?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Porto, could you explain to the jury what exactly is DNA?
Yeah. So DNA stands for
Yeah,
deoxyribonucleic acid, and it's basically the building block that makes us who we are. We each have two copies of our DNA, one that we inherit from mom and one that we inherit from dad. And that this combination makes sure that, barring with the exception of identical twins, we all have different DNA.
And is DNA the same in every cell of a person's body?
Yes. So what that means is, if I were to take a blood sample and a saliva sample from the same person, the same DNA profile will be generated.
Now, you spoke a bit earlier about the different steps included in the DNA testing. If you
Oh,
could,
sorry, I just got to open my messages from Elizabeth. Oh, she said, I'm sorry I didn't stay in chat long earlier. My mum had a fall and had to go to hospital, and she sent a photo. It's awful. Oh, Liz, I'm sorry. Oh, that's awful. Poor bugger. I hope she's okay. I hope you're okay too. It's awful. Sorry. I just saw that. I'll send her a message. Hang on. Oh, that's terrible, Liz. I'm so sorry. I hope your mum's okay. We are thinking of you. And Teresia sends her loves as well. There you go. Sent. Oh. She's cut her nose right open. Poor bugger. Oh, and that's the other thing. The medical examiner said that the wound was not likely really to have been able to be caused from a fall backwards. And Brennan was getting really shitty.
Just a little bit slower. Go through each of those 4 steps again for the jury.
Sure. So like I said, it's a 4-step process. So extraction, quantitation, amplification, and detection. So extraction, we use chemicals and heat to burst open the cells to make that DNA available for use. Quantitation, step 2, we take a small sample of that extracted DNA. We use a different set of chemicals and an instrument to estimate how much DNA is available for use. Amplification is the 3rd step, which I mentioned is the basically molecular photocopier, where it makes millions of copies of specific areas of the DNA. And then the 4th and last step is detection, where we run those amplified copies through an instrument, and we generate the DNA profile as an electronic file on the computer.
Now, Mr. Porto, what is STR?
So STR stands for short tandem repeats, and they're the locations that we're making the millions of copies of.
Now, in your work at the lab, you have something that's referred to as a known item.
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what a known item is?
Sure. So a known item is an item that's taken directly from a person to be used as a reference sample, so we know what the source of that profile is.
And conversely, what is a questioned item?
A questioned item is an item that's taken, let's say, from a crime scene where we don't know what the source is.
Now, do you also have terminology within your lab as far as a parent versus a child item?
Yes, we do.
And can you explain how those labels are and how they reference to what you do in your work?
Sure. So a parent item is, for example, the original item, and the child is a sample of that item. So for example, this box of tissues would be the parent item, and if you were to swab the outside, the swab would be the child item. So the box of tissues would receive, let's say, an item of 1-1. The swabbing of the outside would receive an item of 1-1.1.
Good analogy, sorry.
Now, what are positive and negative controls?
Yeah, so a positive control is a control that has it's a known sample with a known DNA profile that we use in every step of the DNA analysis process to make sure that each step and instrument worked as expected and properly.
Sorry, couldn't resist that
and
one.
And then a negative control is a sample that has no DNA in it. It only receives the chemicals that we use. And that's to ensure that the chemicals that we're using don't have any DNA inherent to them.
Now, when you as an analyst or a forensic scientist too are assigned work within the DNA unit, where do you retrieve that evidence from?
Yeah, so I retrieve it from a locked cold room that's only accessible via keycard.
Now, why are items kept in cold storage?
Yeah, the cold storage helps preserve the DNA for long-term storage.
And as far as the heat versus the cold, why is it that it's specifically kept, or why does the coldness of the storage room help preserve the item?
The cold can help prevent, let's say, growth of bacteria and mold that can degrade DNA.
And what does heat do conversely in reference to an item of forensic value?
Heat can help degrade DNA, and also promotes bacterial and mold growth that can further degrade that DNA.
Now, when you receive an item from the cold storage, how is that item typically packaged when you retrieve it from there?
Sure. So the item comes in these plastic, clear, transparent, plastic sealed containers that has a label with a case number on it. And inside of that, each sample is within like a small plastic tube that has a label with that case number and item number.
Now, at some point, were you assigned to perform some work on a lab case number 22-02184 pertaining to this defendant, Karen Reed?
Yes, I did.
And what type of work in general terms were you assigned to do in this case?
I was assigned to do the DNA analysis process.
And that was on several items, is that correct?
Correct. And
could you explain to the jury the sort of the process that you used to analyze evidence in this case?
Sure. So the case underwent the 4 steps that I explained before. So extraction, quantitation, amplification, and detection.
And there was a known standard that was done in this case, specifically in item number 8-1.1.1. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did another analyst test and report the results from the known blood standard from that item 8-1.1.1?
Correct.
And how is that done?
Yeah, so that undergoes the same process that I explained. It'll go through the 4 steps: extraction, quantitation, amplification, detection. And then the analysts that did the interpretation and reported that out, the known standard out, they went through the profile to make sure that it's one person or single source. And once that went through the review process that I explained, so technical and administrative review, and once that was all completed, the standard was available to be used for comparisons.
And to whom was that known standard identified as belonging to?
John O'Keefe.
Now, you used the word in there as far as a single source. Can you explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is based on your training and experience?
Sure. So a single source is just a DNA profile that has one contributor to it. So only one person contributed DNA to that profile.
What exactly is a DNA profile?
Yeah, so a DNA profile is basically the combination of all of the locations that we amplified during the third step of the process. And it's basically, you can think of it as like a chart, like an EKG, where it has peaks and valleys, and each peak has a specific number. And the DNA profile is just a combination of all those numbers put together.
Now, can you explain to the jury in general terms to start with the process of comparison between a known standard and a questioned or unknown standard?
Sure. So first, I did the analysis on the question items. I did the 4 steps. I analyzed the profiles that were generated. I then interpreted, make sure that I could determine the number of contributors. And once that was completed, I then used the standard that was available to and compared them to all the profiles that were suitable for comparison.
Now, sir, starting with item 3-1.1, what was that a sample from?
That was a sample from taillight passenger.
And from a specific vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, information were you given as to that vehicle that the swab from the taillight was from?
Do you mean like the license plate?
Yes.
Could I refer to my notes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, this is a little detail as far as the testimony goes.
I don't have a problem. Does the defense object?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So the license plate was 3G6684. Right, I'm sorry, 3GC684.
Now, with reference to the swab from the taillight, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. And the DNA profile from this item is at least, so sorry. I'll just restart. So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. And the DNA profile from this item is at least 510 non-alien times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, what does that mean?
So an inclusion is basically when I look at the question DNA profile that was generated, and I compare it to the known DNA profile. And if the characteristics of the known profile are consistent with the characteristics observed in the question DNA profile, that's an inclusion.
Now, as far as that number, 510 non-alien, how many zeros in that number?
So a non-alien is a 1 followed by 30 zeros.
Now, that profile, in addition to Mr. O'Keefe's profile, also had 2 unknown contributors, correct?
Correct.
Now, was that item also submitted to an outside vendor named Bodhi Technologies for further analysis?
Correct.
And with reference to your comparative analysis from the profile from this item to Mr. O'Keefe profile, if you could again just expound upon what does inclusion mean?
Yeah, so an inclusion, I compared the known standard that I had available for use from John O'Keefe to the DNA profile generated from the taillight. And the DNA profile was, if that was consistent with the DNA profile that I observed in the question item, and that's what an inclusion means.
Now, regarding item 3-6, what is the description of that item?
Yeah, so 3-6 is a root end of hair from exterior passenger side rear panel.
And is that the same vehicle as far as the taillight sample?
Correct.
Now, with respect to hair in general, there's a root end and a shaft end, correct?
Correct.
And what limitations does your lab have with regard to DNA testing of hair?
So when we test hair, we're actually, the root end of the hair, we're looking at any potential skin cells that might be attached to the root end. So that's where the DNA that we're looking for is coming from. And if there's not too many, yeah.
Are you familiar with the term based on your training experience known as autosomal DNA?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury what your understanding of that term is?
Yeah, so autosomal DNA is DNA that's located in the nucleus of a cell, and that's the DNA that we inherit from both mom and dad.
Now, are you also familiar, based on your training experience, with a term known as mitochondrial DNA?
Yes.
And can you please explain to the jury what your understanding of the term mitochondrial DNA is?
Yeah, so mitochondrial DNA is DNA that's found in the mitochondria of a cell, and we inherit that from the mother.
It may be somewhat evident, but could you please explain to the jury sort of the difference between autosomal DNA on the one hand and mitochondrial DNA on the other?
Yeah, so like I said, the autosomal DNA is the one that we have two copies of, where we inherit one from mom and one from dad. And then the mitochondrial DNA is a circular DNA that we just inherit from mom.
Now, is the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab equipped to perform mitochondrial DNA testing?
No, we're not.
Now, was the DNA extract from the hair also sent to that external vendor, Bodie Technologies in Lorton, Virginia?
I'm not sure if the extract was sent, but I know that the shaft of the hair was sent to Bodie.
Now, what testing did you perform on the hair?
I did the regular DNA analysis process on the root end of the hair.
And that was done prior to it being shipped to that external vendor, is that correct?
Correct.
And what conclusions were you able to draw from the testing that you did on the hair?
Yeah, so there was no human DNA detected, and STR analysis was not performed.
Now, what does that mean, sir?
Yeah, so it means that I didn't detect any human DNA. So there might be DNA on there, but it was below what our instrumentation could detect.
Now, turning your attention to item 3-2.1.1, what is the description related to that item, sir?
It's a sample from the exterior of broken drinking glass.
And is there any further indication as far as the broken drinking glass, as far as where it was recovered?
Oh, yeah, 34 Fairview Road.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item, the drinking glass?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yeah, so the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 530 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This supports an inclusion.
This is the last time I'll ask you this, but just if you could reiterate to the jury, what does an inclusion mean?
Yep, so an inclusion is when I compare the known standard to the question item, and if the profile in the known standard is consistent with the profile in the question profile, that's an inclusion.
And that number again, as far as 530 non-million, how many zeros again in that number?
That's a 1 followed by 30 zeros.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to another item, 7-1.2.1, what is the description related to that item?
Sample from stain A on upper right leg of jeans.
And is there any further indication as to whom those genes belong to?
John O'Keefe.
Now, were you also able to generate a DNA profile from this item, the stain A on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from the question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude with reference to that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison, and due to limited information, contributors 2 and 3 are not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 570 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Thank you, sir. Now, turning your attention to item 7-1.3.1, what is the description related to that item?
Sample from stain B on upper right leg of jeans.
And same genes as the previous item?
Yes.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item, stain B on the upper right leg of the genes of Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yep, so the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 660 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, with reference to item 7-1.4.1, and again, these items with the dash and the point, is that what you're referring to earlier as a parent-child relationship between items?
Yes.
And what is the description for 7-1.4.1?
Sample from stain C on upper right leg of jeans.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item from stain C on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis of this question item, stain C, to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile is a mixture of at least 2 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison. Due to limited information, contributor 2 is not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors. The DNA profile from this item is at least 830 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, with reference to item 7-1.5.1, what was the description of that?
Sample from stain D on upper right leg of jeans.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item from stain D on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this item to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least
Hey,
670 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals.
How's your mum? Oh, that photo's awful. Oh, the poor bugger. Did she split her nose right open? Oh, it's terrible. Well, at least you're nice and close and could help her. It's one of my biggest fears. Like, my mum's in Queensland, and yeah. How old is she, Liz? And did you have to take her into hospital or anything, or like did she get sewn up and come out, or did she have to be admitted, or fill us in? Oh. Oh, shit. She's only 3 years older than me. I'm old enough to be your mother. That's scary. Holy shit. Oh, dear. Oh. Oh. It's a burp. Luckily, only a burp. Oh, dear. Oh, my Lord. We could be her mother, Tricia. What I was doing at her, actually. Actually, no. It's a bit later than that. Oh, dear. Well, I hope she's hope she gets well soon. Is she's living by herself, or is your dad still around? Is she by ambulance to a local hospital? And they shipped her to a different. She didn't get home until So has she got someone at home with her? Like, she got someone to help her, and I also don't know what your system's like over there, but with a hospital admission over here, you're entitled to what's called post-acute care services, where if you need a dressing changed or IV antibiotics or whatever, they will come out to you. So if you need any assistance, just contact the social work department at the hospital and have a chat with them and see what you're entitled to. Okay, cool. So will he help look after her? She doesn't need dressing changes or antibiotics or anything like that. I've got another pic on Facebook Messenger. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh. Poor bugger. Are you happy if I show that picture or not? You prefer to keep it? Poor love. Some pain meds and antibiotics, yeah. Just looking at. Oh, there's nothing of it too. She'll blow away in the wind. I just thought it would be a good picture to compare the difference in what a punch to the eye almost looks like in comparison. Poor bugger. No, I won't. You can keep her privacy, the poor bugger. But yeah, when you have facial, like impact trauma, you get the bruising. It goes with gravity, so it sinks to the lowest point. So that's why you get black eyes under here. With John, it was above the eye. It was the eyelid itself swollen. That's the difference. So please send her all our love, and we're thinking of her. Lots of ice. Keep the swelling down. And the best thing for bruises like that, believe it or not, is hemorrhoid cream. Hydroid or something like that. Because it constricts those blood vessels and helps the body reabsorb it. So, yeah, I know that's it's like, what? I'm putting bum cream on my face, but it's true. Because hydroid is, or a hemorrhoid is basically a ball of blood. So, yeah, that's the best. Ice and hydroid, says Nurse Jody. Son had a car hood for him the day before yesterday. Oh, I've actually once stupidly, the bloody washing machine lid fell, hit my nose, bled like a stuck pig. Tiniest little cut, friggin' hurt. Like, but yeah, who doesn't lift the lid of the washing machine up properly? Idiot. Well, we need to look after ourselves. Poor bugger. All right. Send her our love, sweetheart.
Than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, did you also do some testing on an item 7-1.6.1?
Yes, I did.
And what was the description associated with that item?
Sample from stain E on upper right leg of jeans.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, stain E, on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Awful.
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison. Due to limited information, contributor 2 is not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 1.0 decillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides a support for an inclusion.
I used a different number there as far as a decillion. How many zeros is a decillion?
Yeah, a decillion is a 1 followed by 33 zeros.
Now, with each of those items that you just testified about as far as the genes, the question items from the stains on Mr. O'Keefe's jeans, those were each located on the right leg, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you also perform some analysis on item 7-1.7.1?
I did.
And what is the description associated with that item number?
Sample from unstained areas of the exterior of jeans.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, from the unstained areas of the exterior of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this questioned item to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 4 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 53 septillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
And again, sir, with that number, as far as 53 septillion times more likely, how many zeros in a septillion?
Yeah.
A septillion is a 1 followed by 24 zeros.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to what's listed as number 12 in your report, but item 7-18.4.1. Did you do some testing on that item as well?
Yes.
And what was the description associated with that?
Sample from stain C on top front of Gray's long sleeve shirt.
And the gray long sleeve shirt, is that attributed as belonging to a specific person?
Yes, John O'Keefe.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, specifically sample from stain C on the top front of the gray long sleeve shirt of Mr. O'Keefe?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that questioned item from the shirt to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the male DNA profile was interpreted as originated from a single contributor. The DNA profile from this item is at least 58 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
And again, sir, that number, as far as 58 octillion times more likely, how many zeros in an octillion?
So an octillion is a 1 followed by 27 zeros.
Now, sir, if I could take you down to listed as 15 in your report, but did you do some testing on item 7-18.14.1?
I did.
And what was the description associated with that item?
So sample from stain L on back bottom right of gray long sleeve shirt.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis with reference to that item, the sample from stain L on the back bottom right of the gray long sleeve shirt, in comparison to the DNA profile from the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 1.0 decillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, did you also perform some analysis on an item numbered 7-18.17.1?
I did.
And what was the description associated with that item, sir?
Sample from unstained areas of exterior of gray long sleeve shirt.
And similarly, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, the sample from the unstained areas of the exterior of the gray long sleeve shirt of Mr. O'Keefe?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison. Due to limited information, contributor 2 is not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 960 non-alien times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to group a couple, 4 separate items from your report, starting with what's listed in your report as number 9 is item 7-3.1, correct?
Correct.
And what is the description associated with that item, sir?
Sample from stain D on right instep of sneaker.
And 11 from your report, you also did some analysis on item 7-18.3.1, is that correct?
Correct.
And what was the description associated with that?
Sample from stain B on top front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.7.1, do you see that as well?
Yes.
And what was the description associated with that item?
Sample from stain F on top front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And lastly, in this group, item 7-18.8.1, what was the description associated with that?
Sample from stain G on back left sleeve of gray long sleeve shirt.
And with respect to each of those last 4 samples from those items, were you able to generate a DNA profile with respect to each of those 4?
Profiles were generated from them.
And what did you conclude based on the generation of those
Hell
profiles?
yeah,
So the profiles that were generated were not suitable for comparison.
And if you could
I resemble that
explain
remark.
briefly to the jury, when you say not suitable for comparison, what do you mean by that?
And
Yeah, so for
I have the
7-3.1,
authority
it was a mixture
on
of
the
at least
topic
5 contributors.
to prove it.
And at the DNA unit, we validated,
I'm gonna pause here and
basically we
say,
tested and
well,
make sure that our
yes,
protocols were only, we can only
fucking
interpret
wrote the
mixtures of up to 4
transcripts.
contributors. So I determined that there were 5 contributors, so that makes it too complex for us to do comparisons to it. So it's not suitable for comparison for that reason. And the other 3 items, due to the quality of the profile, they were not suitable for comparison. And basically what that means is that there was such low amounts of DNA that was in the sample that there was a lack of information from the profiles themselves, so they weren't really suitable for comparisons.
And just to be clear, the item that you're referring to with the 5 possible contributors, that's a shoot, correct?
Correct.
Now, if I could turn your attention in your report to what you have listed as number 10, there are a number of different items listed there, correct?
Correct.
And starting with item 7-17.2.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain A on top front left of orange t-shirt.
And 7-17.3, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain B on top of front left of orange t-shirt.
And item 7-17.4.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain C on top front left of orange t-shirt.
And item 7-17.5.1, what is the description associated with that item?
Sample from stain D on front bottom right of orange t-shirt.
And item 7-17.6.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain E on back left shoulder of orange t-shirt.
And so each of those respectively were sampled.
Correct.
Now turning your attention to item 7-18.2.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain A on right sleeve of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.5.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain D on center front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.6.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain E on center front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.9.1, did you generate a profile from that item as well?
Yes.
And what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain H1 on back left of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.10.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain H2 on back left of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.11.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain I on back right shoulder of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.12.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain J on back bottom right of gray long sleeve shirt.
And lastly, with this group, sirs, item 7-18.13.1, what is the description associated with that?
sample from stain K on back bottom right of gray long sleeve shirt.
And so each of those items beginning with 7-18 were associated with various stains taken from various areas on the gray long sleeve shirt of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
And with respect to each of those areas of the orange t-shirt and the gray long sleeve shirt, were you able to generate a DNA profile from those items?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis of each of the DNA profiles from those items to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the male DNA profile was interpreted as originating from a single contributor. The DNA profile from these items is at least 490 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, again, if you could just remind the jury, when you say single source contributor, what does that mean?
Yeah, so a single source profile is a profile that has one contributor to it. So like one person contributed DNA to that profile.
And with respect to the number, as
Yes,
far
I
as
hate
490
this.
octillion times
Blah,
more
blah,
likely.
blah, 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 blah.
How many zeros
That's
are
all
in
I'm
that
hearing.
So an octillion is a 1 followed by 27 zeros.
Now, lastly, sir, did you perform any analysis with reference to items numbered 8-2 and 8-3?
I did.
And what were the descriptions respectively for
I actually
items
liked
8-2 and 8-3?
The defense.
So item
has
8-2
split up there.
was right hand fingernail
Has
clippings from John
stood.
O'Keefe, and item 8-3 were left hand fingernail clippings from John O'Keefe.
So fingernail clippings from both the right and left hand of Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
What she said.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from those item numbers, the right and left hand fingernail clippings of Mr. O'Keefe?
I was.
And based on, from your comparative analysis of the DNA profile from the right and left hand fingernail clippings, both of Mr. O'Keefe, taken in conjunction with the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yeah, so the male DNA profile was interpreted as originating from a single contributor, and the DNA profile from these items is at least 490 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
So with respect to each the right and left hand fingernail clippings of Mr. O'Keefe, both of those were identified by you or your analysis as a single source contributor, correct?
Correct.
And they were each 490 octillion times more likely to have originated from John O'Keefe than from an unknown, unrelated individual. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I have nothing further on.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Porto, I would like to start by asking you about item 3-1.1, which you've identified as a sample from the passenger side taillight of the vehicle. Can you orient yourself in your report to that item?
Yes.
And that, of course, was the passenger side taillight that was attached to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
You were never asked to do any DNA comparison on any pieces of taillight connected with this case, correct?
Let me check my other report. For taillight, there was another item that was item 3-3.1, which was sampled from apparent glass on rear bumper, if that's what you're referencing.
Okay, so if I suggested to you that the taillight was plastic, that glass wouldn't have been the taillight, correct?
I don't have, that's beyond my scope of testing.
Gotcha. Okay. With regard to the passenger side
polycarbonate.
taillight,
It's not
you
glass.
found that there were 3 contributors of DNA
I
to
don't
that
know. I
taillight
did get an early-
attached to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Discord message off him,
One of
but
those contributors
sort of
appeared to
popped
be
up and popped
John
off.
O'Keefe. Is that fair to
I've
say?
actually gone back in.
He was included
All
to
right.
the profile.
With regard to the other 2 contributors, who were they?
They could be anybody.
Were you ever asked to compare DNA samples from either Canton Police Detective Kevin Albert or Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz to the DNA profile that you analyzed from that passenger side taillight?
I was not.
Now, with regard to the broken drinking glass, which is item 3-2.1.1, do you see that in your report?
I do.
With regard to that, you came up with a DNA profile that also had 3 contributors, correct?
Correct.
One of those contributors appeared to be John O'Keefe, correct?
He was included, correct.
Who were the other 2 contributors?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Were you ever asked with regard to that broken drinking glass to compare the DNA profile that you analyzed with the DNA of either Boston Police Sergeant Brian Albert or ATF agent Brian Higgins?
I was not.
Now, with regard to 7.1.2.1, or maybe it's 7-1.2.1, that's the stain A from the upper right leg of the jeans.
Correct.
All right. And you were aware, you were told that those were the jeans that John O'Keefe was wearing on the morning in question when he was found?
Based on the sample description, that's what it seems.
All right. And it turned out that his DNA was on his own jeans, correct?
He was included in the profile.
All right. And that was unsurprising to you, correct? And with regard to that item, you found that there were 3 contributors of DNA, correct?
Correct.
With John O'Keefe being one of them.
He was included in the profile, yes.
And who were the other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Let's move on to stain B, also from the upper right leg of the jeans. That is 7-1.3.1. You see that in your report?
I do.
When you found a DNA profile, how many contributors of DNA were there?
3 contributors.
All right. And
Yeah,
again, this was
exactly.
John O'Keefe's genes,
You
correct?
vomited.
Based on the description, yes.
So he was one of the 3 contributors.
He was included in the profile, yeah.
Who were the other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Moving on to stain C from the upper right leg of the jeans. 7-1.4.1. You see that in your report?
I do.
With regard to the DNA profile that you analyzed there, how many contributors of DNA were there to that profile?
At least 2, and it was interpreted as 2 contributors.
And again, this is the same pair of jeans that he was found in, correct?
Based on the description, yes.
And you said at least 2 contributors. It actually could have been more than 2.
Based on our protocols, I had to call it 2, and we determined it as 2, but it could be more than 2, yes.
Okay. Well, let's pay attention to the one that was not John O'Keefe, at least that one. Who contributed that DNA to his pants?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
Moving on to stain B, which is 7-1.5.1. And if I can just put my glasses on to make sure I've read my own writing correctly.
Have you guys seen the actual
Actually, is
documentary
it 7-
on this? It's great.
15-1? Did
Really
I get that wrong the first time?
B?
I'm sorry?
Do you mean
Stain D. Stain D.
Stain D is 7-1.5.1.
Oh, I had it right the first time. Okay. With regard to that stain, you also got a DNA profile. And
Genetic-
how many contributors were
slightly
there to that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 3 contributors.
And again, this is John O'Keefe's genes, correct?
Correct.
He was one of the contributors to his own genes, correct?
He was included in the profile.
And with regard to that stain on the upper right leg of his jeans, who contributed the
Jeans?
DNA to the, who were the other 2 contributors of DNA to that stain?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
And then finally, with regard to that upper right leg of the jeans, there was also a stain
I've got
E,
the links
correct?
to it
Correct.
if you want to
How many
watch it.
contributors did you find to that DNA profile?
2 contributors.
For
One
free.
of which was John O'Keefe to his own genes, correct?
He was included, yes.
And who was the other contributor to that stain on the jeans?
It could be anybody. I don't know.
And by the way, just for the record, that was 7.1.6.1?
7-1.6.
7-1.6.1. Thank you, sir. Okay, now, with regard to the unstained area of the exterior of the jeans, do you see item 7-1.7.1?
Yes.
You found a DNA profile with regard to that unstained area as well, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors of DNA were there to that unstained area of the jeans?
I interpret it as 4 contributors.
And John O'Keefe was one of those, correct?
He was included in the profile.
His own genes.
Based on the description, yes.
Who were the other 3 contributors to that DNA profile?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
And before we move on to the sneaker, I just wanted to ask you a question about the passenger side taillight that I neglected to ask you. That was the one where there were 3 contributors, correct? And again, I'm going back to 3-1.1.
Correct.
Sorry to skip around, sir. I'm not trying to make this
all
any
right.
more confusing than it is. With regard to the passenger side taillight and that DNA profile, are you able to determine when that DNA was deposited on the passenger side taillight that was attached to the vehicle?
No, I'm not.
Are you able to testify with any certainty that it was deposited there, say, on January 28th or 29th of 2022?
No, I can't.
So consistent with your analysis of it, are you able to say whether it occurred prior to January 28th of 2022?
No, I can't.
Were you aware that that vehicle was John O'Keefe's girlfriend's vehicle?
I was not.
Were you provided any information about just how often he had been in and around that vehicle prior to January 28th of 2022? So moving on to 7-3.1, which was the right instep of the sneaker, correct? You see that in your report?
Yep.
With regard to that particular stain, you noted how many contributors of DNA
Yeah, it was interpreted as at least 5 contributors.
And when you have interpreted it as at least 5 contributors, what does that do to your ability to find out who contributed that DNA?
So based on our protocols, we're not able to do any comparisons to any mixtures that are 5 or more contributors. So it's not suitable for comparisons.
Okay, which means that with regard to the sneaker, at least, you couldn't even say whether John O'Keefe's DNA was on it, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to all 5, do you have any idea who contributed the DNA to that sneaker?
No, I don't.
Now, moving on to, I just have a couple more for you, sir. Moving on to what is labeled as stain L, which is 7-18.14.1, I believe. Do you see that in your report?
I do.
And that was a stain on the back bottom of his long sleeve shirt, correct?
Correct.
And were you told that the long sleeve shirt was his outer clothing when he was found?
I don't believe so.
How many contributors to that stain on the back bottom of his long sleeve shirt did you find in that DNA profile?
I interpreted it as 2 contributors.
And did you make any match with regard to either of those contributors or both?
I did comparisons, and John O'Keefe was included as one of the contributors.
Okay, so John O'Keefe was a contributor of DNA to his own long sleeve shirt, correct?
Based on the descriptions, correct.
All right, and whose other DNA was on that shirt?
I don't know.
And then finally, with regard to 7-18.17.1, that was an unstained area of the exterior of that shirt, correct? That same long sleeve shirt.
Correct.
And you tested that and got a DNA profile, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors were there to that DNA profile?
I interpreted it as 2 contributors.
Was John O'Keefe one of them?
He was included as one of the contributors.
Okay, so his DNA was found on his own shirt, correct?
Based on the description, correct.
And who contributed the other DNA profile to John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
I don't know.
With regard to any of the stains on the upper right leg of the jeans, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you've discussed here today. Were you ever asked to compare the DNA profile with the DNA profiles of either Brian Higgins or Brian Albert?
I was not.
All right.
And your answer was you were not?
I was not.
Did anybody ever provide you with DNA profiles of Brian Higgins or Brian Albert?
Sustained tonight.
Right.
If I may have one moment, Judge.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just have one more question for you, Mr. Porto, and I do want to thank you for answering all my questions here today. You wrote reports on your analysis of all the items and the work that you did on this case.
I did.
And you are directed.
Up your car insurance for hail damage. Bloody hell. You have had a bad trot up there. Bad. Yep. She's getting reamed. Old Mother Nature's got, yeah, not even any lube. Actually, I'm going to close this door because I'm now starting to get cold.
Pursuant to
I'll be
protocol
back.
to address those reports to somebody, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Who was it that you sent the reports to in this
Same
case?
as Alessi did with the medical examiner yesterday. Awesome.
Did you send those reports to Michael Proctor?
Sustained. Jurors, strike the question.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Why didn't my starred ones come up?
Mr. Porto, based on your training and experience and years of doing DNA testing at the lab, when it comes to samples from items of clothing, is it uncommon or common to have multiple contributors?
That depends. It can happen, but it's possible, yes.
Is it something that's a complete anomaly?
I wouldn't say so, no.
Now, turning your attention back to item 3-1.1, that's the sample from the passenger side taillight of the defendant's vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. O'Keefe was found to, his known DNA profile was found to be an inclusion for the DNA profile from the swab from the defendant's passenger side taillight, correct?
He was included in the profile, yes.
And to what statistical, what is the number associated with that inclusion?
The DNA profile from this item is 510 non-alien times more likely to have it originated from John O'Keefe, and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals.
And Mr. Porter, if I could turn you back to number 10 in your report, there's a number of different items listed there, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the items listed associated with various stains on various areas of Mr. O'Keefe's orange t-shirt and gray long sleeve shirt, there's about 13 different DNA profiles that you generated in reference to those items, correct?
Correct.
And from those 13 different items, they're all from a single contributor, is that correct?
Correct. They were interpreted as originated from a single contributor.
And as far as the DNA profile, your comparison of each of those 13 different stains on the orange t-shirt and the gray long sleeve shirt, what were your conclusions again as your comparison with the known standard of John O'Keefe?
Yeah, so the profile was interpreted as originated from a single contributor, and the DNA profile from these items is at least 490 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
And lastly, with reference to the fingernail clippings from both the right hand and the left hand of Mr. O'Keefe, those were also, your analysis provided for inclusion of Mr. O'Keefe's known DNA standard, correct?
He was included in the profile, correct.
And again, the profile from both the right hand and the left hand fingernail clippings was a single source contributor, correct?
Sustained.
How many sources were associated with those?
Objection.
Sustained.
Nothing further.
Okay, you all set, Mr. Unity?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
You are all set, Mr. Porter. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Who is the next witness?
I'll call Ashley VALLIER to stand.
Okay. Jim.
You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case down here is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. VALLIER.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the court?
My name is Ash VALLIER, spelled VALLIER.
And where do you work?
I work at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And where did you go to school?
I got my bachelor degree in biochemistry and cell biology from UC San Diego and a master's degree in biomedical forensic sciences from Boston University.
Now, following your education, where did you go to work from there?
Directly after I got my degree at Boston University, I worked at the Broad Institute.
What did you do at the Broad Institute?
I did quality control checks of items that potentially could be tested for pharmaceutical use.
Now, how long have you worked at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
A little over 6 years.
Now, is the state lab credited?
It is.
And by whom?
ANAB.
And what does ANAB stand for?
It stands for ANSI National Accreditation Board.
And the ANSI within the ANAB, what does that stand for?
That is another acronym that I don't recall right now.
Now, as part of that accreditation process, do you undergo any sort of type of proficiency testing?
I do.
And can you explain to the jury what that proficiency testing process consists of?
A proficiency test is a test that is given from an outside agency in the discipline that you do casework in, that you would work through like a normal case, but it has an expected result at the end.
And how often do you undergo proficiency testing?
Every year.
And what areas do you specifically undergo proficiency testing in?
I've done proficiency tests in gunshot primer residue and physical match analysis.
And have you successfully completed each of those proficiency tests that you've taken?
I have.
Now, when you initially joined the State Police Lab, what was your position and title that you were hired for?
I was hired as a forensic scientist 1.
Now, can you please explain to the jury what your duties and responsibilities were as a forensic scientist 1?
So forensic scientist 1 is the introductory level. It's when you start your training in whatever discipline you're going to be trained in and quality control checks. After you've been at the laboratory for over a year and you're signed off to do casework, you become a forensic scientist 2.
And you're currently a forensic scientist 2, is that correct?
Yes.
What is the difference between a forensic scientist 1 and a forensic scientist 2 at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
A forensic scientist 2 has been at the lab for over a year and can do casework.
Now, just in general terms, what does the trace unit do or examine within the State Police Crime Laboratory?
I'm a part of the trace arson and explosives unit. So we analyze a wide range of pieces of evidence. So there's trace covers a lot of small things. So paint, fibers, glass, gunshot primer residue, physical matches. Arson covers fire debris evidence, and explosives covers explosives.
Now, specifically with reference to physical match analysis, can you explain to the jury, just in general terms at first, how is that analysis performed?
So physical match analysis is piecing broken things together to see if they were at once a single item. Generally, you look at the questioned item first, the item that you don't know specifically where it came from. Look at that, and then you would look at the known item, which is an item with a known source, like specifically like this window or like this vehicle. They're analyzed at separate times. And then if it looks like there could potentially be a physical match, you would analyze them together and see if they have a mechanical fit.
Now, when you retrieve items just in general to do some sort of physical match analysis, where do you get those items from?
We have evidence storage locations at the laboratory.
And how are they typically packaged when you receive them?
They can be packaged in cardboard boxes, brown paper bags, heat sealed plastic bags. It depends on the individual items.
And when you're doing this analysis, as far as a physical match analysis, what do you do to your bench between your examination of separately packaged items?
Before I do any analysis, I bleach my bench, clean my tools, and then put down a fresh sheet of butcher paper.
And why do you do that?
To make sure everything's clean.
Now, again, speaking more in general terms, on what types of evidence can you perform a physical match analysis?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. In general terms, with your work within the lab, on what types of items can you perform a physical match analysis?
A lot. Anything that has a broken or irregular edge.
Would that include glass?
Yes.
Would that include plastic?
Yes.
What are some of the other things that would also include?
Any sort of like polymer, metals.
And when you're doing a physical match analysis, what instruments do you utilize in the course of that analysis?
Generally, I'll use a stereo zoom microscope. Depending on the size of the items compared, I can use other microscopes as well.
Now, what is a stereo zoom microscope?
A stereo zoom microscope is a microscope that's mounted on a stand. So it gives a wider range of view that you can look at larger items.
And how are you using that specifically in your physical match analysis of, let's say, items of plastic?
I'll use it to look at the edges and see if there's any like defining characteristics along those broken edges.
Now, as you're going through your analysis, do you document your work as you go?
I do.
And how do you do that?
With handwritten notes and with photos.
Now, at some point, were you assigned to perform some work on lab case number 22-02184 pertaining to this defendant, Karen Reed?
Yes.
And what type of work were you assigned to do in this case?
I was asked to do physical match analysis, and then later on, I was asked to look at, do some trace recovery, look at some debris.
Starting with the physical match analysis, how many different items approximately were you asked to look at?
Over 10.
Several, fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And how are each of those items packaged when you receive them?
So the questioned items were packaged first in a large paper bag, and then each item was individually packaged in a smaller brown paper bag within that container.
Now, again, just in general terms, because you've used it a couple times. When you say questioned item versus known item, as it pertains to this analysis in this case, what were the questioned items generally, and what was the known item?
The questioned items were items labeled as coming from a road, and the known item was labeled as coming from a taillight from a vehicle.
Now, in this case, did you perform your physical match analysis in the same manner that you've previously described based on your education, training, and experience within the lab?
Yes.
Now, initially, you had examined some various plastic and glass items, and there was a drinking straw in there as well, correct?
Yes.
And specifically, as far as the item numbers that you looked at in this physical match analysis, could you provide the jury with a list of just the item numbers first to start with?
May
Your
I?
Honor.
You have your report with you, Ms. Willett?
I do.
Is there any objections to any items in the report?
No objection at all.
So feel free to use your.
Thank you, Your
Um, so the questioned items labeled as coming from the road were item 7-5, item 7-6, 7-8, 7-9, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, 7-16, and 7-19. And the known item labeled coming from the passenger side taillight is item 3-1.
Now, Ms. VALLIER, within those specific item numbers of how things are labeled at your lab, if there are different pieces associated with the same item, how is it that you label those specifically in this physical match analysis here?
So some of the items had multiple pieces within that item. So I labeled them A, B, C, etc., depending on how many pieces there were.
Now, if you could, please explain to the jury just, again, the process that you followed in your examination of each of those items.
So first I looked at the questioned items, the items labeled as coming from the road. I looked at, I documented the overall package because they were all packaged in the same container, the same brown paper bag. Documented that individually inside of it, there were a bunch of individual brown paper bags, documented that, and I went one at a time through them, opening each paper bag, taking written notes, taking photos of the items inside. Within each item, I looked to see if any of those pieces fit together. And I cleaned my bench in between the items.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
And Your Honor, those quotes I've shown Mr. Yannetti all in advance.
Is there an objection to any of them,
There's
Mr.
no
Mayor?
objection, Your Honor.
All right, so why don't we just go ahead and mark them all as evidence?
Your Honor, if I could, I was going to take them item by item.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Ms. VALLIER, I'm showing you 4 photographs. You recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize those to be?
These are photos that I took of item 3-1.
Again, what was the description associated with item 3-1?
Passenger side taillight.
And was that description further give sort of a specific vehicle or license plate associated with the vehicle that the taillight came?
It does. Massachusetts 3GC684.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth is seeking to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit A through D.
Right, those are cool. That's why I wanted to just mark them all because they're all.
That's fine. If the court prefers, I can provide them.
Exhibits 170A through 170B.
Can I approach with the remainder, Your Honor?
Yes. If you have them in sections, we can do that.
This way I'm showing you 2 more photographs. Just ask if you recognize those.
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-5.
And again, from your report, what was the description in reference to item 7-5?
Yeah.
Thank you. You're fine. It's just that. Yes.
Okay. Piece of plastic red recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth is seeking to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit A and B.
Okay.
Exhibit 171A and B.
My apologies, Your Honor. The Court's Commission may publish some of those.
Yes.
photos. Ms. Gilman, if I could first ask for photograph 2122. And Ms. VALLIER, what's up on the screen? That is the bag associated with the passenger side taillight or the known item, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2125. And Ms. Gilman, if you could just enlarge a little bit towards the bottom where the ruler is. Now, Ms. VALLIER, what's up on the screen now as far as the sort of notations there? Who made those?
I did.
And how do you know that you were the one who made those?
That's my handwriting, and those are my initials.
So the AMB is for your name, correct?
Yes.
And with respect to each of the items that you photographed, you had photographs that were taken of sort of what was in the evidence bag in total, displayed on your table that you would clean with the solution and everything else, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom out a little bit to show the item. And again, what's up on the screen, that is item 3-1, the known item as far as.
And what does coon ass sound like? I'm gonna go clean my fridge. She was so cute last time. Remember, she had that really white blonde hair, and and she makes these little noises. She's very cute, but yeah, a boring AF testimony. Like, I hate bringing evidence in; it just shits me. I'm happy to skip it if you want. I got you on my TV. You dick. You don't have to do that. You dag.
Tail light from the defendant's vehicle.
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2126.
I always want to know what a CUNAS stands for.
And Ms. Vallier, if you could
I'd
just
like what it
describe
sounds
for the
like.
jury, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Those are the same items just turned over.
And lastly, for this set, Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2135. And again, same item as far as 3-1, the tail light taken from the defendant's vehicle.
I got distracted and made myself a
Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for photograph 1905.
tonight's culinary delight.
Ms. Vallier, as far as with each of these items, you take photographs
Occasion.
when they're inside the bag and then once you take them out of the bag, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1908.
I can do the WOG accent, no problems, because I got that in the
And
family. You
what are we
know?
looking at in this
But
photograph?
I don't know what this
The contents
occasion-
of item
what
7-5.
you call fucking. I don't know. CUNAS. Mm-mm.
May I approach again, Your Honor? Okay, 2 more photographs. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
I like it with the blonde
Photos of
hair,
item
Bella.
7-6.
That's one of the bag and then one when the item is taken out of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the description for item 7-6?
Piece of plastic, clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Oh.
I'll call up to introduce in a minute the next exhibit, A and B.
172 A and B.
With the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1921
1921.
and then photograph 1924.
Yay, more bits of glass.
And what's depicted up on this photograph?
Who cares?
Oh,
Yep.
forgive me.
74.
Yep. Fragments. Red, clear. Yep. They all joined together. Lovely.
Good. Please tell the jury what the description is associated with item 7-6.
Very down.
Piece of plastic,
Are you
6,
pissed?
red, clear, and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'll call up to introduce in a minute as the next
Troy
exhibit.
Landry. I need to Google that then.
176 A and B.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, 1979 and 1982. Again, Ms. Vallier, I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little on the items themselves.
Oh, look, more red, white, and black.
And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Photo of item 7-11.
Okay.
These are photos, again, that you
Well,
took
ma-
in the lab
well,
during the course
people.
of your comparative or physical match analysis, correct?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ooh.
2 other photos. You could look at those. Do you recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-12.
And again, photograph of the bag, photograph of the items outside of the bag.
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description of item 7-12.
Trace item, 14 glass and clear plastic, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'll call both seek to introduce in a minute the next
Okay.
exhibit. A and B.
Exhibit 177 A. and
Most
178 B.
feared gators. Oh, Jesus.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2015 and 2018. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom in a little on the items. Thank you. And Ms. Vallier, again, what can you describe what's depicted up on the screen?
A photo I took of item 7-12.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
These 2 other photographs. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-13.
And again, one of the bag and then one with the items removed from the bag.
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description for item 7-13.
Ah, this
Piece of
content is
plastic,
not
red and
available in
black,
my
recovered from
location.
34 Fairview Road.
I'll look to see if it's
Fuck
used
you,
in
History Channel.
Exhibit A, B.
Exhibit 178 A and 178 B.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, 1997 and 2000. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could, please zoom in on the items. Thank you. And Ms. VALLIER, directing your attention to the screen, can you describe for the jury what is depicted on the screen now?
Photo I took of item 7-13.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photos. Do you recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize that?
Photos I took of item 7-14.
And again, one of the bag and one of the items removed from the bag.
Yes.
And again, can you please tell the jury what the description is associated with item 7-14?
Pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I want to introduce the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibit 179, A and B.
May I
What?
publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2009 and 2012. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in on the item. And Ms. VALLIER, as far as what's depicted on the screen, again, if you could describe for the jury what that is.
A photo of item 7-14.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Other photographs, if you could recognize those.
I do.
And what do you recognize that?
Photos of item 7-15.
And again, one of the bag and one of the items taken from the bag, correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description associated with item 7-15.
Piece of plastic, 3 clear and 5 red, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I will seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, A and B.
180, A, and 180, B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2072.
Yes.
Yes.
And 2077, please. Again, if you could zoom just a little as far as the items are concerned. And Ms. VALLIER, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Item 7-15.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Other photographs, do you recognize that?
I do.
What do you recognize that?
Photos I took of item 7-16.
And again, one of the bag and then one of the contents from the bag, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what was the description associated with item 7-16.
Piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'm also seeking to introduce and admit the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibit 181, A and B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2036 and 2040. And Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little. Thank you very much. And Ms. VALLIER, if you could, please describe for the jury what we're looking at in this particular photograph.
This is item 7-16.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, with respect to each of these items that you examined in your physical match analysis, again, as far as the process is concerned, with the questioned items, what are you doing with reference to each of those questioned items first?
First, I document them, as you've seen. I'll see if any of those within the item have a physical match with each other. And then I'll package that away and look at all the questioned items before I compare inter-questioned items to see if there are any physical matches in between all the 7- items.
And as far as your notes are concerned, what is it that you're noting in reference to each of those items as far as what characteristics of the item are you taking note of?
I'll note the size, the color, and the material.
And what, if any, measurements do you take of each of those respective items as well?
I'll take the length and width of each item.
Now, with respect, starting with item 3-1, the passenger side taillight from the defendant's vehicle, sort of internally within that item 3-1, what did you conclude as far as your physical match analysis within that item alone?
Within item 3-1, I believe 4 of the pieces fit together.
And Your Honor, if the witness may refer to her note
Yes.
as to, thank you.
Yes, four of the pieces fit together within item 3-1.
And which 4 of the pieces?
Pieces A, B, D, and F.
And as far as the labeling of those pieces of an individual item, let's just start with item 3-1. A, B, D, and F. How are they labeled, and how do you sort of physically label those items?
We have a label maker in the lab, so I'll print out the case number, the item number, and then A, B, C, and my initials, and that goes physically on each of those items, or all of those pieces.
So if any of those items had a sticker on it with a letter or something associated with that, that would be something that you did during the course of your physical match analysis, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 7-5, piece of plastic red recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude as far as your physical match analysis just within that single item?
There was no physical match noted among those 3 pieces of apparent plastic.
And when you say no physical match found from the different pieces within that item, what does that mean?
The broken edges of each piece did not align.
So the broken edges of the individual pieces within item 7-5 did not fit together with the broken edges of pieces within item 7-5, correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to item 7-6, a clear piece of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road, what did you conclude based on your physical match analysis just pertaining to that item 7-6?
So this item was 2 pieces of colorless apparent plastic, and there was no physical match noted between those two pieces.
Now, with reference to item 7-8, red and clear plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road,
Ooh.
what did you conclude in regard to your physical match analysis just with the pieces contained within item 7-8?
So there were 14 pieces. Pieces C and D fit together, and pieces E and F fit together.
And when you say fit together, is there a term of art used within your field called a mechanical fit?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean as far as what is a mechanical fit?
So a mechanical fit and a physical match are the same thing. It's when the broken edges align together to show that they were once a single item.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 7-9, pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis of just the individual pieces contained within item 7-9?
So this item had 3 pieces, and no physical match was found between those.
Turning your attention to item 7-10, red pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able, that is a single item, is that correct?
Correct.
So no physical match because there's nothing to match, it's just one piece, correct?
Correct.
And turning your attention to item 7-11, identified as 6 red, clear, and black pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I was
What
watching
did you
Swamp
conclude
People.
in regard to your physical match analysis just within those pieces contained within 7-11?
So the item had 6 pieces, and there was no physical match noted among those 6.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-12, which was identified as 14 pieces of glass and clear plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Again, what did you conclude from your physical match analysis just from the various pieces contained within item 7-12?
So there were 14 pieces overall. Pieces B, C, D, F, and K fit together mechanically as one unit. And then pieces E and I fit together mechanically as one unit. And pieces M and N fit together mechanically as one unit.
Now, through your examination of these pieces in particular and other pieces as well, did you note any debris contained on the pieces that you located?
Yes.
And can you say anything as far as what that debris was, or was there any analysis done of that debris specifically?
I just note that there was debris present, and I package it into a tin that's retained with the original packaging.
I'm turning your attention to item
Mine is
7-13.
out.
That was a piece of plastic red and black recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, just with respect to your physical match analysis of the various pieces of 7-13, what did you conclude?
So that item had 3 pieces, and there was no physical match noted among those 3.
And again, with reference to item 7-14, piece of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road, that was again a single item, correct?
A single piece, yes.
So I'll turn your attention to item 7-15, 3 clear and 5 red pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis, again, just from the various pieces contained within item 7-15?
So there were 8 pieces in this one. Pieces F and H fit together mechanically.
Turning your attention to, lastly, for this purpose, item 7-16, a piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis, just contained within the pieces of that single item 7-16?
So that item had 7 pieces. Pieces A, C, and D fit together mechanically.
Now, Ms. VALLIER, once you had examined each of those pieces individually, what did you do next in your analysis?
Next, I compared all of the inter-questioned these items 7-5 to 7-16. I compared them to see if there was a mechanical fit amongst those between those items.
Mr. Lally, is this a good place for our break?
That's perfect. Yes, Your Honor.
All right, jurors, we'll take our morning break. We'll see that here in about 15 minutes. Ms. Lally, you can walk over. Thank you. And can I see counsel for a minute, please? Mr. Alessi, I'll hear you.
You are unmuted.
Now, I believe, not teasing Vicky. After court yesterday, when the jury left, Alessi brought up an issue. I think it was a rule. Where did I write it? No. So what's happened is, the state, Brennan has hired this company called Aperture to rebut the ARCA witnesses. So Aperture produced a report on ARCA's findings and gave it to ARCA, and ARCA was then going to write a letter to rebut that. In the meantime, Aperture revised that letter, a report, in anticipation of what they thought ARCA was going to respond with. But the prosecution didn't disclose it to anyone. So they actually changed the evidence without disclosing it. So Alessi's brought up this Rule 17 violation, and I think that's what they're going to hear now. So it was a rebuttal on a rebuttal or something like that. But it got pretty heated.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yesterday, Your Honor discussed with the parties, and parties were heard with regard to the issues we have raised with regard to the timing of the May 8th report from Mr. Burgess that the defense received on May 11th. And what I wanted to do, Your Honor, is briefly provide the information Your Honor asked for yesterday, which was how much time we might need under various circumstances. And so I wanted to take a few moments to put that in context. It will only take me a brief amount of time to do so. So, Your Honor, there is a timing issue, but there's most importantly a substantive issue. I will not, of course, go into the detail of yesterday, but the timing really is informed by the substantive issue. And so, with regard to the matter, we went back and we looked at more deeply the effect of this timing and this movement of the what has been referred to as clock drift in Mr. Burgess's report that we got on May 11th. I spoke of the significance yesterday, and here's what I would like to add as is relevant to the time we're going to need. I again urge the court to reject it.
In the amended report of Aperture, they had sunk the clocks from the SUV to the cell phone, which apparently has the potential of hiding any timing discrepancies, as well as it altered the evidence and it wasn't disclosed, something like that.
Substantively, because what we did was we went and we looked at matters such as the cross-examination of a key witness in this case, Jennifer McCabe, she testified with regard to observing a vehicle at 12:45 a.m. And that's a significant point. I know I don't need to elucidate for Your Honor. All of this is going in significant part, if not total part, to what has been as alleged a collision here, which we vigorously contest. It just no collision ever occurred. But the timing of it, the timing of what's alleged by the Commonwealth is very important. The seconds are important. Literally 1 second can turn not only the Commonwealth's theory completely around in circles and debunk it, but also the jury's analysis of it. And this is the point I wanted to elucidate today, is that the jurors have been provided information and the defense has aimed its defense on this claim based upon, in large part, timing. So now what we have on May 11th, Mr. Burgess changing the timing. So what does it affect? Not only witnesses like Jennifer McCabe, who we strategized with regard to, but also my decision to not even cross Trooper Garino, because Trooper Garino had testimony with regard to when Ms. Reed connected with the Wi-Fi at One Meadows, and there's a certain time associated with that. We have Mr. Whiffen, who went through, the Commonwealth went through a timeline, and we believe they went through a timeline for the theory that they had, and I cross-examined Mr. Whiffen extensively with regard to that timeline. There were several defense strategies, and effectuations of strategies based upon that timing. So with regard to the substance, Your Honor, and there's more, but I think that's a fair representation. It innervates our entire defense. The question now of Your Honor of how much time it will take the defense to react to Mr. Burgess, I wanted to say it's not only a reaction, but it's a substantive defense analysis, and 3/4 of the effectuation of that has already occurred through our presentation in terms of cross-examination. So we would have to, and we're still evaluating that, revisit all of that. And secondly, we would have to put that into the calculation of all of our witnesses that we've already prepared that are based upon that timeline. So it is a very significant point. And to the extent that the Commonwealth tries to argue, well, we never really committed that much to a certain time period. I again urge the court to look at the report of Dr. Judson Welcher, where he has 1162-2 with a specific range, 1238 to 43. And even in their range, it's a very small time, which further supports how each second matters in this regard. Now to the answer to the question Your Honor asked yesterday. Again, I urge that it just be rejected and we keep this trial moving in its current pace. To the extent that that does not occur, and again, we urge that it be rejected, the report, because it's a Rule 14 violation, there is no remedy for the defense. However, to the extent, and given Your Honor nonetheless asked me for an answer in time, we would need 4 days to be able to address it. We will not ever be able to recover strategically or substantively from it, given all that's been presented to the jury. And it will be very difficult to figure out how we're going to go present a defense after we've already presented to the jury our defense and our cross-examination. It's not really structurally possible to simply take 4 days and address Mr. Burgess, because we can't go back to all the witnesses I just mentioned and others and start crossing them in eliciting testimony with this new time period in mind. But I wanted to answer the question, Your Honor, respectfully. It would be 4 days for us to even go from where we are now and then try to alter not only witnesses such as Arca, but DeSogra and Gaffney and other types of witnesses that we have in that regard. So, Your Honor, respectfully, that is my response.
All right. Does the Commonwealth want to be heard?
Yeah. Respectfully, Your Honor, the defense is very confused. They attempt to confuse the issue. They attempt to confuse Your Honor about what the impact will be. This has never been a change. The government is not changing their timeline. The Commonwealth is not changing any information. The Commonwealth is not offering anything that affects in any way the testimony of witnesses. It's notable in the argument there is no relationship to the facts or the actual report that was provided. The Commonwealth has always provided the data, which they have, and they hadn't a chance to analyze. And the interpretation of the data has been different between the parties. We have been clear from the beginning at the time in which the infotainment system shows that there was a collision. We've been clear. And the data has been clear. That has never changed. That data in the telestream system is based on a clock in the Lexus, which both sides know full well is different than a clock in an iPhone. You can see all the productions of Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation where it shows that time, 12:31:43, has never changed. Also, it has been clear that both sides appreciate that there's a variance between the clock in the Lexus, which leads to that system information, and a clock in an iPhone. In fact, the defense was so aware of it, they hired an expert, Mr. DeSorga, who gave his opinions about that variance. We have never suggested there was not a variance in this case. In fact, we have highlighted the variance. When their expert, Mr. DeSorga, provided a report, we believed that his analysis was wrong. And so we looked at the variance and the data that was available from the telestream system and John O'Keefe's Ways data that was on his phone that was always available to all of the experts in both sides. And when Mr. Burgess looked at the variance at the time of a 3-point turn about 7 minutes before the collision, he simply matched the Ways information on Mr. O'Keefe's phone to that of the information from the telescreen and saw that it was a 21 to 29 second variance. All that data was available to the defense because their expert made an improper conclusion is not our fault. This does not change the testimony of anybody. They point to Jen McCabe's text message where she said she thought she saw a motor vehicle out front that evening at 12:45. That is not consistent with the Commonwealth timeline, but that doesn't change. That favors the defense. It does not change anything to do with ARCA. ARCA has not, as far as I've seen in any reports, ever talked about the variance, just Mr. DeSorda. And so because this is inconvenient for the defense, and because it further focuses the variance that we've already discussed and provided, isn't a reason to exclude it. It's not late discovery. It's not a Rule 14 violation. It is further analysis of information that was already provided, opinions that were already provided, and it is in response to their experts' mistake about that variance. There's nothing new here. Nothing has changed.
Go right ahead, Mr. Alessi. The only question I had for you yesterday, for you to respond to today, was the time, so I gave you more leeway.
And you're giving me more leeway, and I appreciate
Go
it.
right ahead.
So, 2 items, Your Honor. As I alluded to yesterday, it's been a point that Mr. Brennan just made. We believe strongly, Your Honor, that at a minimum there needs to be a voir dire of Mr. Burgess. And we believe strongly there needs to be a voir dire because we have a serious concern that the sequestration order has been violated. He has changed a very key aspect of this matter after the testimony of Mr. Whiffen, after Mr. Whiffen presenting a timeline. In his report, Mr. Burgess, his new purported report of May 8th, he references to align it with Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone. That is the essence of Mr. Whiffen's report, is anchoring in his timeline. He did a whole timeline on Mr. O'Keefe's report. And conveniently, the proposed alteration by Mr. Burgess in his report of this clock drift now makes it very, very close to fitting within Mr. Whiffen's timeline and the theory of the prosecution. At a minimum, we need a voir dire to ask Mr. Burgess, why did he do what he did? Another reason for the voir dire. Mr. Brennan yesterday said, we were surprised to get the report. That further makes great concern as to why Mr. Burgess did what he did. Lastly, Your Honor, with regard to Mr. Brennan's point, he made it yesterday and I corrected it. He said it again today, that supposedly our witness, Mr. DeSogra, made an error and that we're trying to correct an error of Mr. DeSogra. That is incorrect, Your Honor. Again, Mr. DeSogra was responding to Mr. Burgess's report. Mr. DeSogra's report is entirely saying, okay, Mr. Burgess says this, and therefore the defense says this. Now Mr. Burgess is changing what he is saying. So it is completely incorrect to say that Mr. DeSogra is trying to correct an error. That would require, again, Mr. DeSogra to change what he has done. Final point is this. There was also an issue, Your Honor, and this is extremely important with regard to burden shifting. There's not only the question of should this be allowed at all, there's not only the question of how much time the defense will need, but there's a third important issue, and that's burden shifting. What Mr. Brennan proposed yesterday was a very irregular process where essentially the Commonwealth gets 3 bites at the apple for a problem that they caused. The problem we're talking about is Mr. Burgess changing a significant part of a timeline. Yes, there was a variance that he had, but he picked a range of the variance. He's now changing the variance. So what the Commonwealth is proposing is that our witnesses go forward, the aperture gets to wait, they come on, and then the aperture gets to come on yet again.
I did not understand the Commonwealth asking me that. Are you asking me to do that, Mr. Brennan?
I'm not sure what he's saying. So
It sounds like DeBroja or whatever.
His name is DeSogra, yes.
DeSoder, you're suggesting that the Commonwealth suggested yesterday that he testifies first and then the aperture witnesses?
What I understood was going to happen is Mr. Brennan said yesterday that Dr. Welcher cannot come in until after.
No, I didn't understand that. I understood Dr. Welcher, Shannon Burgess, and then Dr. Welcher for everything that you folks received prior to January 31st, or whatever the date was. And then potentially for all the new ARCA information that came in May 7th, that portion, Dr. Welcher returning on rebuttal for. Not that they were holding back Dr. Welcher completely. Is that correct, Mr. Brennan?
that's the conversation I had. That conversation I wasn't part of.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood that, Mr. Alessi.
So just so I'm clear, what is it that the
Mr. Brennan, all right, this is separate, and I'd really like to give everybody a break here. What is it the Commonwealth is asking to do regarding that?
Regarding Mr. Burgess or Mr. Welcher?
Which Dr. Welcher.
Dr. Welcher should come in and testify to his PowerPoint, all of his opinions, which address all of the prior representations and opinions of ARCA, although we still don't have any raw information, but we're ready to move forward. Regarding any new opinions, which there is over a dozen new opinions that includes testing, video, experiments, Dr. Welcher should have enough time to review, conduct his own testing, turn it over, and then in rebuttal, address limited to the new issues raised by ARCA.
That's how I understood it, Mr. Alessi.
And that's how I did also. But the question is, now with the Burgess changing of the clock drift, how many times is the Commonwealth proposing that Dr. Welcher gets to come in and talk about that? Is he just going to come in and talk about it?
So you talk with Mr. Brennan about that. All right, so I'm all set for this.
There are no changes. There is no changes in the timeline. He keeps trying to portray this as something has changed. Nothing has changed. It's the exact same. He's always said there's a variance. He's been looking into the variance for a long time, and now he has found a method to show the exact variance. It's not changing. There's nothing in the reports that changes as far as the timeline. That's just an attempt to cause fear. There's nothing that has changed. We can look at the reports. It's all the same, always has been, other than now he's identified the mistake of their expert, and that led him to be able to identify the variance, which is helpful and new. And the suggestion that there's been some violation of an order, no good faith basis whatsoever.
Does the Commonwealth oppose a voir dire just on that one issue?
Yes, because it's suggesting that there's a good faith basis for it. Nothing has. Ian Whiffin's report was available to the defense and our experts months and months and months ago. The issue of variance has been an ongoing issue for months. There's nothing that triggers a change in the testimony to adopt or adapt to it. Our timeline has been the same since when we turned it over at the beginning. They cannot point to one thing that has changed between Dr. Welcher, Ian Whiffin, Jessica Hyde, or Shannon Burgess. They are just saying things without a good faith basis. In the report, show us where something has changed.
Your Honor, to inform you, Your Honor, we would like to print the page in the clock adjustment because what Mr. Brennan says is
Yes,
correct.
and I'm happy to any information.
Just blows them off.
All right, so go on, please.
No doubt she'll let it in. Two sides, two different rules. Short break. So it's been 26 minutes and we're actually at real time now. And they've been on a break for 26 minutes. She's probably reading all of the reports. How about we watch a little bit of Drunkle? For a giggle. So so this is last Friday night. Ian Runkle normally joins Rob on Law and Lumber for their F&F Fridays. Last Friday, Ian didn't join until the 5-hour mark. And when he came on, he was plastered. So I just did a little montage of his behavior, and the funniest part was Rob's responses because he couldn't see, or he wasn't paying attention to Rob's facial expressions, and their stream got wound up very quickly. Funny as. Have a look.
They said, hey, you have to open this via the secret method.
How the fuck are you supposed to know that?
Go. Chat. I am mildly to severely intoxicated, so.
Oh my.
But yeah, secret passage in the thing.
Yuri Buchanan is a credible witness.
For fucking up their investigation. Like, and this is the point I've made on Twitter before. How was I supposed to know to open up the secret passage?
The ladies love some Alan Jackson. But they pay attention, they lock in. When frickin' Hank Brennan talks, just like the rest of us, what do we hear, Bibbs? We hear things such as, wah, 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 wah.
Secret passage.
And that wasn't even like, that was a tenth of I was limited by time. It was so funny. So funny. I sent him a copy. Bloody hysterical. But the trophy was from remember when he was on the podcast? He had just won I think it was a Creative Content Creators Award or something like that. And they've said to him, well, you'll get your trophy sent to you, and you get a silver coin with it as a commemorative thing. And he couldn't find the coin. And yeah, they said it's in the secret passage in the bottom of the statue. Yeah, it was hysterical. Uh-huh. Did you see my my short I did yesterday with Brennan? I'm way too immature for this. This is the question he asked. Was like, let's see if I can find it. Back to me. Where am I? Find my own short. Yeah. I'll have to share it, won't I? Yeah. So this is I really Scotty Bello. That's as big as I can make it. Ready, steady. It's only quick.
When you're assessing to determine whether there's any penetration, do you measure the length of the wound?
I know.
Assessing to determine whether there's any penetration, do you
Turn it up.
measure the length of the wound? Of the
Well,
abrasion? When you're assessing to determine whether there's any penetration, do you measure the length of the wound? Of the abrasion?
I need to be heard at sidebar.
Oh, this is the mic drop moment. And I'll have to turn the volume down because I recorded it on boost because you couldn't hear it properly. So hopefully this doesn't blow your eardrums out. So Alessi is cross-examining Zachary Clark.
I need to be heard at sidebar.
I will hear you.
I will hear you. Asshole. Did you hear that? Play it again. Asshole. Because he'd already asked to be heard and she denied him. And yeah, and then he's like, I need to be heard at sidebar.
Sidebar.
I will hear you.
I will hear you. Asshole. Oh, what's that?
He's been teeing this issue up. Like a month ago or 2 months ago or whatever it is now, Brennan said in open court, I'm not here to exclude ARCA.
Yeah. Right. What? Sounds like the court's coming back. I can hear noises. Hey there, thanks for dropping in. Bow, bow, bow. Hope you join us again. Bow, bow, bow. Oh, look forward to next time. Bow, bow, bow. Get to talk about true crime.
All right, so Mix Valère, I'm going to ask you that you speak right into your microphone when you answer, if you could, please.
Okay.
And don't say asshole. Because we get picked up.
Mr. Lally, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mix Valère, we talked about sort of the physical match or mechanical fit analysis that you did with regard to each of the items individually, correct?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury the process that you undertook in your physical match analysis between different item numbers?
So between different items, amongst the questioned ones, I only compared the pieces that were large enough to have a label on them. Some pieces were quite small. I utilized several benches and divided them up into sections for each item, and individually pulled out all of those pieces. And then I had another bench where I did the actual comparison. I started with all the pieces of the same color and looked to see if any of those had potential edges that could match.
Now, with respect to items 715 and 716, did you do a physical match analysis between those two separate items?
May I look at my notes?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And what, if any, conclusions did you come to in relation to your physical match analysis between item 715 and item 716?
Two pieces from item 7-15, F and H, fit mechanically with two pieces from item 7-16, F and G.
And what, if any, conclusion were you able to draw with reference to the physical match between pieces from item 715 and pieces from item 716?
Those four pieces were at one time together as part of a larger unit.
Now, Ms. VALLIER, what physical match analysis did you do with reference to item 7-6 and 7-11?
So one piece from item 7-6, piece B, fit mechanically with one piece from item 7-11, piece D.
Oh.
So those two pieces were at one time together as a larger unit.
And Ms. VALLIER, with reference to items 7-8, 7-9, and 7-16, what, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from any physical match analysis you did between pieces from those three items?
So two pieces from item 7-8, pieces C and D, one piece from item 7-9, piece A, and one piece from 7-16, piece E were found to have a mechanical fit. So those pieces were at one time together as a larger unit.
Lastly, for this section, at some point did you do a physical match analysis for the glass pieces in items 7-12 and 7-14?
Yes.
And what conclusions were you able to draw from your physical match analysis between 7-12 and 7-14?
There was no physical match between the glass pieces from, or parent glass pieces from 7-12 and the glass piece from item 7-14.
Now, Ms. VALLIER, are you aware that there was an additional analysis that was done with respect to glass pieces and other glass pieces that you didn't examine in your analysis at your lab?
I know that there was other trace work done. I'm not sure exactly what the work was.
Okay. And do you know who performed that additional trace work?
Christina Hanley.
And who is she to you as far as in reference to your work at the lab?
She's my supervisor.
Now, with regard to each of these items individually, they came as labeled in individual bags as we demonstrated on the screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to those bags, did you note any particular date associated on the front of those bags?
That's documented in my photos.
And all I'm asking here is that with respect to each of those bags of items, whether they be 3-1, 7-4, 7-5 or 6 or 8, many of those bags had different dates on them, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you received those items in that bag, you essentially removed the items from those individual bags, placed them on the table, and examined them, correct?
Yes.
And that examination included a microscopic examination?
Yes.
Now, with respect to any of those items, there were some items that pieces within the same bag that had the same date on that bag did not fit together mechanically, correct?
Yes.
However, there were items from one bag collected on one date that did fit mechanically with items from another bag collected on another date. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 3-1. Again, for the jury, what is the physical description associated with item 3-1?
Item passenger side taillight, Massachusetts 3GC684.
Now, did you perform a physical match analysis with pieces from item 3-1, 7-5, 7-6, 7-8, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, and 7-16?
I compared them, yes.
And what, if any, conclusions did you come to from your analysis, your physical match analysis between item 3-1 and all of the items beginning with the number 7?
There was a physical match with, do you want me to list?
If you
all
could,
of them?
please.
Okay. So 2 pieces from item 7-5, 4 pieces from item 7-8, 1 piece from item 7-10, 4 pieces from item 7-11, 2 pieces from item 7-12, 2 pieces from item 7-13, 4 pieces from item 7-15, and 4 pieces from item 7-16 were found to fit mechanically with item 3-1.
And what, if any, conclusions were you then able to draw from your physical match analysis between item 3-1 and each of those respective items beginning with the number 7?
Those pieces were once together as part of a larger unit.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
There, I'm showing you 3 additional photographs. Do you recognize what's depicted in those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
This is a comparison between item 3-1 and those pieces from all of the other pieces.
Uh-huh.
Your Honor, I'm about to seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit A, B, and C.
Is there any objections, Tina?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
It's 182, A, and C.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2096. Ms. Gilman, yes. If you could even zoom in just a little bit more on the item itself. Ms. VALLIER, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So those pieces that I labeled from item 7 all of those, they all fit together mechanically into this piece.
And as far as earlier, you were testifying as far as the label maker and the different various pieces that you would label throughout the process of your physical match analysis. Do you see these in this photograph as well?
I do.
And where are they located with reference to the reconstructed piece above?
They're those little white rectangles on the piece.
So what's depicted here is the mechanical fit between items 7-5, 7-6, 7-8, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, and 7-16, correct?
Not items 7-8 and 7-14, but the other ones, yes.
And why not those two?
They didn't fit mechanically with the other pieces.
I can't even pass.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2150. Again, if you could just zoom in a little. And Ms. VALLIER, what are we looking at in this photograph?
I know what I'll do.
So on the right side was that piece that was just shown. And on the left side is item 3-1.
And lastly, Ms. Gilman, if we could have 2151. Again, if you could zoom in on that item just a little. And Ms. VALLIER, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So that's that right piece on top of the tail light from the previous photo.
And is this the mechanical fit that you were testifying about earlier with reference to item 3-1, the taillight housing, and all of the various pieces that were found at 34 Fairview, starting with the number 7?
Yes.
Are we today? 17.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Ms. VALLIER, lastly, in reference, did you also receive some debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
Correct.
Yes.
And Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Thank you very much. And what did you find contained within that debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
So it was 5 different items. So it was debris collected from, labeled as coming from the clothing. There was mostly debris, some apparent fibers.
Were there any pieces of apparent plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
Was there dirt contained within the debris?
Yes.
And that debris was labeled as an item 17-18.18. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And what is it that you did with the debris from the gray long sleeve shirt and the orange t-shirt?
So those were all packaged in like glassine folds. And I looked through it and documented it.
When you say you documented it, did you look at it under a microscope?
Yes.
So you did an examination under a microscope, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you measure some of those items contained within the debris?
Yes.
Specifically, did you measure items of apparent clear plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
And what did you measure those items to be?
The piece of clear apparent plastic was approximately 1/8 inch by 1/16 inch.
And once you had conducted your preliminary analysis of those items, where did those items go?
I did no further examination on this myself. Christina Hanley might have examined some of these further.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Giannetti?
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to first talk fairly briefly about your reconstruction of the taillight to which you've testified. At the outset, by the way, that was item 7-3.1. Am I correct?
Sorry, for which one?
That's the taillight, this 7-3.1. Am I correct?
3-1, I believe.
7-3-1.
The taillight is item 3-1.
Oh, 3-1. I'm so sorry. Okay. With regard to that particular item, your lab has different departments, correct? Criminalists who do different things, correct?
Yes.
You are aware that there are scientists within your lab who do DNA analysis, for instance, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And with regard to the order of processing items, is the DNA analysis done before or after you get the item?
It's usually before.
Okay. In this case, it was before. Am I correct?
I believe so.
Were you made aware that there were 3 contributors of DNA to that taillight, 3-1?
How long were you made aware of that?
No.
Once you reconstructed the taillight, you'll agree with me that it was missing a piece, correct? Or pieces?
There was an empty spot on the overall reconstruction, yes.
Were you ever provided with any pieces of taillight that would have filled in that missing spot?
No.
Were you ever provided or told about any pieces recovered from One Meadows Ave in Canton?
No.
Were you ever told about a collision at One Meadows Ave in Canton? In any case, you'll agree with me, there was no glass in that taillight at all, correct?
Within the taillight, I classified them as apparent plastic pieces.
There's no glass as part of the taillight, correct?
I mean, it depends on what you call, like, the bulbs usually have glass as far as I'm aware.
Those are very, very thin glass though, correct? Those bulbs?
Yes.
All right. Now, your lab received clothing in connection with this case. You've testified to that, correct?
I received the debris labeled as coming from the clothing. I never saw the clothing at all.
Right, but you're aware that your lab received clothing before the debris got to you, correct?
Yes.
And your understanding was that that was John O'Keefe's clothing in which he was found on January 29th of 2022, correct?
It's labeled as coming from him. I'm not sure of the date that it was found.
Okay. You understand the procedure of that goes on at your lab when it receives evidence?
Yes.
And you know that once clothing is brought to your lab, it's given evidence numbers, correct?
Yes.
And then one of your colleagues at the lab handled the clothing and or examined it, correct, before it came to you?
Yes.
And your understanding is that one of your colleagues retrieved debris from those items of clothing and then packaged it in a fold before it got to you, correct?
Yes.
You then open up the fold and you look at the debris, correct?
Yes.
You never saw that debris inside the clothing, correct?
Correct.
And the pieces of clothing that come in are given evidence numbers when your lab receives them, correct?
Yes.
For instance, the orange t-shirt was given or was named item number 7-17.
Yes.
And the gray long sleeve shirt was item 7-18, correct?
Yes.
And your lab is accredited, correct?
Yes.
There is a complete chain of custody from the moment the clothing was brought to the lab to when the debris was removed from the clothing, ultimately to when you're in court today handling the items, correct?
Yes, our in-lab chain of custody extends from when we receive it to when the submitting agent, it is returned to the submitting agency.
Okay. And you have complete confidence that the chain of custody at your lab is effective at making sure that the evidence does not get lost or mixed up or contaminated, right?
I mean, chain of custody is meant to track where a piece of evidence is. The evidence unit also does inventories and audits to make sure that things are where they're supposed to be.
And you have confidence in your lab's chain of custody policies and procedures, correct?
Yes.
But you'll agree that your lab cannot control who handled the clothing before it arrived at your lab, correct?
Yes.
There are times in which crime scene technicians or criminalists from your lab actually participate in the search for evidence at a crime scene, do they not?
Some of the people at the lab are crime scene responders, yes.
There are times when they actually take custody of evidence. Again, I'm talking about people from your lab, professionals. They take custody right from the crime scene and transport that evidence to your lab, correct?
Yes.
In those circumstances, your lab would have a complete chain of custody from discovery to seizure to testing or whatever comparison you're doing until you release the items, correct?
Yes, but the electronic chain of custody doesn't start until that item is entered into our LIMS system at the lab.
Right, but when it's entered in, it would be entered in as having been seized by somebody from your lab, correct? in the hypothetical that I'm giving you?
Yeah, there's an evidence submission form that says that this crime scene responder submitted it to the laboratory.
There are other cases, however, when the evidence is brought to your lab by the police, correct?
Yes.
Local departments have access to your lab?
For evidence drop-off, yes.
The state police have access to your lab for evidence drop-off?
Yes.
And in this case, it was not a criminalist or other professional from your lab who seized the clothing and brought it to your lab, correct?
I'm not sure.
Do you have a record of that in your report in terms of who it was that brought the material to your lab?
I could look at the evidence submission form to see who.
With the court's permission?
Yes.
Michael Proctor, guessing.
Okay.
Sidebar. Sidebar swoosh. Coming up. Sidebar. Swoosh. What else have I got? Nothing that's really appropriate, but then this one gives me a laugh every time. Sidewalk. Drop a vibe.
I do.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
Having reviewed your reports, can you testify to the jury about who it was that brought this evidence into the lab?
So you can tell us.
Okay. So submission 7, all the items that are 7 dash, was submitted by Trooper Michael Proctor.
Oh, Joe. Surprise!
Were you aware of the date of the incident that gave rise to this case?
Yes.
And what was that date?
January 29th, 2022.
Were you aware that the clothing that you received was seized from the Good Samaritan Hospital that very day?
No.
What date was the clothing brought
What
to
date?
your lab?
What date?
March 14th, 2022.
So that means that your chain of custody at the lab began on March 14th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that was about 6 weeks after the date of the incident, January 29th of 2022?
Yes.
And of course, you can't speak to the chain of custody from January 29th to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And you have no information and do not know why Michael Proctor waited 6 weeks to bring this clothing to your lab, do you?
Sustained.
Do you know where Michael Proctor stored this clothing during that 6-week period?
No.
Do you know how often he was alone with access to the clothing during that 6-week period? Do you know if he had access to pieces of red or clear taillight during that 6-week period?
Sustained. Move on, Mr. Kennedy.
Can't unring that bell.
You were not present when the clothing was seized, correct?
Correct.
You did not have custody of this clothing from January 29th of 2022 to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
You do not know what was done with the clothing before it arrived at your lab, correct?
You've covered this, Mr. Kennedy. Move on, please.
One last question. You cannot vouch for how the clothing or taillight pieces were handled before they got to your lab, correct?
I cannot.
Anything further, Mr. Lally, or are you all set? Okay. I'm not cribbing it.
No. Very good. Mr. Lear, there is a separate evidence unit contained within the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, correct?
Correct.
And fair to say you have absolutely nothing to do with that, correct?
I'm not a part of that unit.
And so your responsibility as far as chain of custody is concerned is from when you retrieve the item during your analysis and then when you return the item to the evidence unit, correct?
Correct.
And from that analysis that you performed, you found that there were 10 different items, starting with the number 7, that were a mechanical fit to 3-1, the taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle, correct?
If it's 10 items, I don't have, I can count them.
Okay. As far as all those items beginning with 7 that you went through or elucidated on your direct examination, each of those were a mechanical fit to each other and then to the taillight housing in 3-1.
The pieces that were previously stated, yes.
Nothing further.
All right. You are all set.
You are all set. She needs to come up with a different line. Or I need to make a Suno song called You Are All Set.
All right, so jurors, that is it for today.
What?
I'm told when I spoke with counsel earlier that we are still on track. I have to tell you those same cautions. Please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't
Wonder
do
if they're going to
any
deal with this
independent research or investigation
possible
into this
violation.
case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it and let us know. Be extra careful with your social media use. And also, I just want to remind you, next week, Thursday is a half day and Friday is a day off. All right, so we'll see you on Monday.
Please rise for the jury.
All right, so this has to do, I think, with the aperture report, which I have just done an analysis of. So I will copy and paste that and put it wherever I can. Copied. I might put one in Discord.
Okay.
I don't think we can create a link. Hang on.
So before we recess, I appreciate that council provided me with the information. Mr. Alessi, I got the 2 reports that you had that were incorporated and what the Commonwealth had given me a few minutes before, but I appreciate that it was pointed out here. We've had full argument on this yesterday and today. My findings for the record are that the defendant has not persuaded me of undue surprise or unfair prejudice by this information, and I don't find that there's delayed disclosure. Of course, all of this is ample game for cross-examination, certainly as to what Mr. Burgess knew, what he looked at, why he looked at it, when he looked at it, why he changed his report, and violation of the sequestration order is all for cross-examination, and I will give you a lot of leeway with that, Mr. Alessi, but I'm not having a voir dire on that.
You're an asshole.
Mr. Alessi, I can tell you,
an
obviously,
asshole.
you've got a great facility for cross-examining on the underlying information here. You've done fulsome cross-examinations. I have every confidence you can do it here again. But if after the direct, you demonstrate that you need further time, I'll certainly hear you on that. And more importantly, perhaps, if you feel that the testimony of Jen McCabe and the others that you've mentioned is critical and that you need to recall them, I'll hear you on that as well. So regarding Dr. Welcher, as my understanding, the request yesterday was for, and it's been a request, I think, a few days. We've addressed it at sidebar, and I found that it wasn't the right time. Let's see how much Dr. Welcher could go through. I understand Dr. Welcher will testify in the Commonwealth's case in chief next week or so, Mr. Brennan.
Hopefully next week, if not,
All right.
the day after the holiday.
And that will be for all of the material that was provided to the defendant initially, right, by the Commonwealth's discovery deadline?
Correct.
And what you're asking for is that after ARCA testifies the new information, you're asking for rebuttal, right?
Yes, limited to the new information.
All right, so I would allow under these circumstances a limited rebuttal, and we can define the scope after we hear the testimony of Acker. So those are my rulings. Your objections were noted. I'll see everybody on Monday.
All right, for the court, please.
Oh, so that's it for the day. Right. Okay. Let me just save this and then I'll print it out and we'll go through it because I want to understand it and what's just happened. Where is it? Karen. Where do I find it? There. This is aperture. Right, save it there. Now let's print this out. Talk amongst yourselves. Don't mind me. I'm just sleuthing. Did I put it important? There we go. Yeah. Oh, shit. I think I saved it as the wrong file. Fucking did, you dipshit. Save. What if I go into that PDF? Hang on. That one. Copy. Oh, I'll put it on my drive and then I can print it from
The
there.
darker part that's being measured there is the laceration. And then above the laceration, you can kind of see it, the three darker spots. All that is red on his head, and then the area around it, and it sort of formed a pattern. And it really became a big, big part of this case. Can someone who is hit by a car and falls back on their head on the ground, is it consistent with that type of a wound? And there's the laceration, and above the laceration is a wound. So I want to get your thoughts about this, because it was up on the screen for a long time, and it seems like this is going to be a really big issue in this case. Joseph Krowski Jr.
I'll take the lead on this. And here's the impactful part of the testimony of Scorty Bello. That laceration on the head, she explained in detail. That's the actual cause of death. That's the injury.
What I've been saying.
And that is consistent with a man of John O'Keefe's size falling backwards, striking his head on solid ground. The laceration is caused by blunt force impact with the ground. The skin is pushed against the bone. And she went on to explain in here, I think she talked about when people first looked at the injuries to John O'Keefe, they looked at his two black eyes and they raccoon eyes. They thought that was consistent with a fight.
No,
what that is periorbital ecchymosis.
That's right.
And when you have that brain injury, the blood, you get an intracranial bleed,
Pressure.
and the blood pulls behind the eyes, and that's why you have uniform black eyes, and that's why Alessi didn't even challenge her on that.
How about,
but I just want to make one more point. I know it's your show. But
one more point.
One more point. What's important, she's testifying to the cause of death, not the method of death. Homicide isn't even admissible statutorily in Massachusetts and most states. That's a liability question. That's a question for the jury. She doesn't know if he was pushed, hit by a car, how he got to the ground, but what she does know is the actual mechanism of death, which is the brain bleed from the blunt force trauma to the back of the head. And the defense won't challenge that.
So, but the question is, this particular pattern, the abrasion and the laceration in the back of the head, that's going to be a big issue trying to figure out
how it happened. Well, that's true. And once again, we go back to that old issue of reasonable doubt, because if there's different theories and even the medical examiner can't figure it out, the fact that also that there were not just swelling of the eyes, but there were actually lacerations of the nose and the front, and she was specifically asked that. Would that be, if you were simply hit by a car and you hit your back of your head, why would those be there? And the question she was asked was, would that be, could that be consistent or inconsistent with a fight? And she said consistent. And again, there's different theories here, but I'm sure the prosecution will come up with another reason. But the very fact that there's room for argument here and nothing is conclusive, again, that's beyond a reasonable doubt. Really, they don't, they just don't hit it. And as I've said, I'll wrap this up by saying many times before, I've said the dirty little secret of criminal trials is they're not necessarily a search for truth, they're a search for doubt.
Yep.
From the defense side, obviously.
Yes.
Take a listen to the medical examiner. I want everyone to hear this because there was a lot of cross-examination about what wasn't found on John O'Keefe.
Assuming a fall backwards onto frozen ground and there being on a lawn with grass, would you expect to see any grass at all in the injury site?
It's possible to have grass.
Did you have any information regarding the circumstances that you said you look at in trying to determine manner of death as to whether there were any stones or rocks around the scene?
That I did not have any information.
What, if any, consideration did you make in your assessment of cause and manner of death with regard to stones or rocks?
I did not make any.
All right. Nick, what are your thoughts about the wounds on the back of the head, the lack of grass?
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory at this point. She opined that that laceration to the back of his head would have incapacitated him. So if what the Commonwealth theory is him being struck at 12:31 and about 36 seconds, how did he use his cell phone after that? And that's why we now see Aperture wanting to change their theory of the time that John O'Keefe got struck, because two clocks don't match. So if he's laying outside in the snow after being struck by that, there is absolutely no way he's using his cell phone. So you have, the laceration in the back of the head. How did he receive those two cuts in the front of his face? Now, is he now going to say you got hit, the back and the front when he fell to the ground? I personally don't see how Scotty Bello helps the prosecution. I think this is another win for the Commonwealth in this situation.
That's why, go ahead, you go.
Well, I was just going to say that's why Hank Brennan is going to use Dr. Wolf, the neurosurgeon, coming up. Well, I know what you're going to say, Nick, that.
And you're going to be wrong, but
that the medical examiner said, well, this neurosurgeon is not qualified. However, he's a brain surgeon. He's more qualified than she is to talk about brain injuries.
So how about when defense counsel brings in their expert, and then at the end of the trial, the jury is saying, geez, I hear this theory, I hear that theory. We don't really have a smoking gun, something that absolutely nails us down. So again, if the jury just says, geez, I don't really know who to believe, then the case has not been proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
You know those black eyes are not consistent with a fight. They're
the two cuts
not.
Lacerations
There's a
are.
laceration on the nose. Karen Reed, in one of her interviews, said she picked a piece of glass out of his nose.
And how about the eye lacerations?
That's the explained cause of the laceration on the nose. Most of the injuries are on the right side of his body, consistent with getting clipped by the car. Karen Reed says, I might have clipped her. But the point I was going to make, and why the defense is so incensed, is they were working on a flawed theory of the timeline. And what the Commonwealth raised today during the break that Matt just brought up is because they have said they've continued working, and they had said in their opening there's a variant. They now have the phone data and the text stream data completely synced where they can calibrate a 21-second difference, and her car is backing up at the same exact time he stops moving with the phone. So that in conjunction with the autopsy,
Aperture's whole case.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. That's why they
wouldn't fight so hard to keep it out. Defense wouldn't fight so hard to keep it out.
Stick around, because in 9 o'clock, we're going to talk about Ian Whiffin's testimony and his timeline. But in this hour, when we come back, we're going to talk more about those autopsy photos. We are live in Dedham. Don't go anywhere.
All right. Fuck you, Vinny. Let's go through this. So I actually put the transcript into the AI, the what do you call it? The database. Where am I? There I am. Okay. Yeah. And because I don't understand the argument and what's going on and all the law and stuff, I put in all of the elements. So I pretty much asked it basically to find the hearing or argument, so to speak, that happened outside the presence of the jury last night on yesterday's testimony between the defence and the prosecution regarding the Aperture report. Now, the way that it was explained, but well, I was watching Uncivil try to explain what had actually happened, and from that argument, he said that Aperture was hired by the Commonwealth to rebut the ARCA testimony and their reports. And so they wrote a report and presented it to ARCA, and ARCA was in the process of rebutting that when they submitted an amended report that had altered the information in there in anticipation of what they believed ARCA was going to respond with. And what they'd done is they had synced the time clocks from the SUV to the cell phone, which then can mask any particular time discrepancies. And because there's been so many time discrepancies throughout the whole trial, and the amended report wasn't disclosed either. That's why they're calling a Rule 14 or some shit. So I've asked it to explain what the issue is and the argument that was raised and what each side is claiming. So actually, can I bring it up on the... You can see it. I should be able to. Oh, look at that. So clever. Now, there we go. How do I make it bigger? I move that. No. All right. That's the start. I don't know how to make it full screen. So you can read it better. Zoom. Oh, 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 look at me go. Fuck. There we go. That's better. Much better. All right, that was my question. That is... Oh. Come on. Oh, this is my question. Sorry. This is what they go through, how they think and what they're doing, what they're searching for, what they're analyzing before they give me the answer. Okay, analysis of the hearing outside of the jury. All right. The hearing outside the jury's presence involved a discovery dispute regarding expert witnesses and late disclosure of evidence. There are two main issues being debated. One, the disclosure of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth introduced a new expert report from Aperture dated May 8th regarding timing discrepancies in the evidence. The defence argues that it is an improper late disclosure. The rebuttal expert testimony due to late defence disclosures. The Commonwealth argues that they should be allowed to have their expert, Dr. Welcher, testify in rebuttal after the defence experts are to testify because of what they characterise as late and extensive disclosures by the defence. What the defence is claiming. Attorney Alessi. Improper late disclosure. The Commonwealth provided a new expert report dated May 8th that changes previous testimony about clock drift, the time variances between different electronic devices without adequate notice. The disclosure violates discovery rules. The defence argues this report should have been provided earlier as the concepts discussed, the clock differences, have been known for months. Attorney Alessi argues that allowing the Commonwealth's expert to testify after defence experts and then again in rebuttal would improperly shift the burden of proof to the defence and provide the prosecution with an unfair double rebuttal opportunity. The defence argues that the proposed order of witnesses manipulates the standard order of proof in a criminal trial. Legal basis. There is a legitimate legal basis for the defence's concerns. Discovery rules. Criminal procedure typically requires timely disclosure of evidence and expert opinions to prevent trial by ambush and ensure each side has adequate time to prepare. Due process. The late disclosure of critical evidence may implicate the defendant's due process rights under the 14th Amendment, especially in a criminal case where the burden of proof is on the prosecution. In criminal trials, the prosecution typically presents its case first, followed by the defence, and finally the prosecution's rebuttal, allowing multiple opportunities for prosecution experts to testify could unfairly advantage the prosecution. Has the Commonwealth done anything wrong? Procedurally, there appears to be a procedural issue with the timing of the Commonwealth's disclosure. The defence argues the information about clock drift has been known for months, making the May 8th disclosure untimely and potentially in violation of discovery rules. Morally, the Commonwealth's request to have their expert testify again after the defence experts could be seen as attempting to gain an unfair advantage in the proceedings. The Commonwealth argues that late disclosure was justified because it was in response to the defence expert, Mr. Dorbo-Dezoga. The new information is favourable to their case. They were surprised to receive this information themselves. Possible solutions for the issue. This is I asked it to give me solutions. Maintain standard order of proof. Have all Commonwealth experts testify before the defence experts, preventing the rebuttal to rebuttal situation the defence is concerned about. Additional preparation time. Allow the Commonwealth expert, Dr. Welcher, additional time to review the defence's expert materials before. I think they've got that round the wrong way. But maintain the proper order of witnesses. Limited rebuttal testimony, which is what she said. Allow rebuttal testimony, but strictly limit it to addressing new issues raised by the experts, not rehashing previous testimony. So that's her ruling, that one. And the defence were asking for it to be excluded. So the most extreme remedy would be to exclude the Commonwealth's May 8th expert report due to its late disclosure. Context and significance. This hearing demonstrates a critical issue in the Karen Read murder trial regarding timing evidence. The dispute centres on expert analysis of electronic timing data from text messages, phone activity, the vehicle black box. The timing of these events appears to be central to the case. As Attorney Brennan mentioned, the most important issue in this case regarding the expert testimony. The trial involves determining precisely when certain events occurred, and these competing expert analyses could significantly impact the jury's understanding of the timeline of events. The judge indicated they would take this information under advisement and consider the appropriate way to handle the expert testimony and discovery issues. So once I've downloaded today's transcript and uploaded it again, I can then get them to analyze her her response and her findings. So that's what that was all about, apparently. Now I understand. See, I learn something new every day. You guys are talking about fishing, are you? Oh, Lord. Canal. Let me go back. I've missed a whole. I can't stand Vinny now. Maybe I should write a book or make a show or more. Oh, did you get, Teresa, did you get the link for, and Elizabeth, the documentary? And let me know if you can open it, because I only sent you the first episode. If you can open that, I'll send the rest. Maybe I should write a book or make a show. Yep. We already have the Jen McCabe movie coming in. Oh, really? Are you for real? Oh, my Lord. Oh. Give me strength. In the movie, both Jen and Karen are alive, John. So, oh, you are so full of shit. You need to go to Teresa's pond. You'll catch fish there. I'm having to go Saturday if storms don't knock me out. Hope you get lots of fish. Oh, there you go. Check out my goldfish pond. Yeah, on Pet Pics. I'm the opposite. I like fishing, but I don't like baiting them. Yeah. In Australia, I think my favourite fishing is surf fishing. That is fun. Really fun. I don't know if you guys have done that over there, but it's, basically using surf rods. So they're massive big rods, and you fish off the beach with an esky beside you and a nice comfy camp chair in the sun. So, yeah, it's great.